When I was talking about imagination, when I was knee-high to a grasshopper, way in the back of my folks' property, there was a great big sand lot, tremendous sand lot. I used to spend hours and hours taking my trucks and my tractors and going through, and I would make roads, and I would make houses, and I would make towns, and Bob would have envied what I did. It was just tremendous what I did. But it was using my imagination, and I really enjoyed it. So again, this is imagination. We're going to talk about that today. How powerful is our imagination? Can we imagine a family of life? Now, what do I mean by a family of life? It's a beautiful May day. I know when you drove in here, you were amazed at all the greenery and plants and the beauty of everything. That's what I mean by a family of life. If we look around on our earth of creation here, you know, we look at the birds in the sky, the insects in the ground, the animals of the woods, both large and small, all around us, the trees, vegetation, all kinds of vegetation around us. Do we really take notice of what's around us? I think we have to look a lot harder at what we've got. It's what I call the family of oneness. We are no different than the creation that's around us. We're equal to, we're not subservient to. And I think it's time that we started realizing how important all of the vegetation, the birds in the sky, the animals that live all around us, the insects of the ground, all of this, we have to take notice of what we've got and be aware of all the beauty that's here. There's a writer. He was one of my favorite writers way back when, and he's a writer, he's an author, and he was a spiritual guru, if you will, all over the world. His name was Krishnamurti. Many of you might recognize the name. At any rate, Krishnamurti was a very powerful man, and he was invited to a very distinguished dinner. And there were all kinds of dignitaries there, and there were monks there included. Now, as Krishnamurti pulled up, he was so well known that there was one particular monk that was just so enthusiastic to see him that he went out in the garden and he grabbed all these flowers, and he just, you know, couldn't get enough of them, grabbing them, and he had a big bouquet of flowers. And he brought them up to Krishnamurti. Krishnamurti took them, threw them on the ground, and he looked at them, and he gave him a pair of scissors, and he said, I want you to go back out to the garden. I want you to ask permission from the flowers, and then I want you to snip them with scissors. And that's what the monk did. And then he came back with a beautiful bouquet of flowers. Krishnamurti took them, and he bowed to the monk and said, thank you very much. Now, what does that mean? It means at that time, Krishnamurti was wise enough as a spiritual leader to know that plants have a life. They have a life just like we have a life. We have no right to just take and grab them and throw things around and, you know, do all the killing that we do. We don't have a right to do that. All of life around us is equal to us. And we have to begin to understand that if we don't already. I think we understand it, we just forget about it, and we need to go back to it again. In Africa, there are tribes that have yet to be civilized by us or other people. And they'll have a tribe, and members of that tribe will go out and sometimes spend days hunting their prey for their meal. And on one particular occasion, I remember reading, they took about 2 or 3 days, and they captured a lioness, and they speared it, and they killed it. Now, when they were done, when the animal had died, before they did anything at all, they went back up to the lioness, and they told the lioness, "Thank you very much for giving up your life to save ours." And they went through a whole big ritual. I don't know all of the words. You know, I would just be paraphrasing. But the idea is that they had enough respect for what they were doing to be able to thank the lioness for their meal. And then they would take and quarter it, and then they would each go in their own direction, and they had their meal for however long they had their meal. Now, can you imagine what we do? You know, we go to Wegmans, we buy a steak, we throw it on the grill, we eat it real fast because we got a dozen other things to do. Imagine if we had to take the time to go out and get our food, whether it's plants or whether it's meat, whatever it might be, chickens. You know, take a real hard look at what we're doing today. We got chickens that live a life that big. They're fed all kinds of stuff, so they get fat real quick. They don't have a life. They're not out there running around. It's mass producing. There's cows that are stuck in a stall. They can't move. They're right there, and it's a small little spot. They're force-fed. You know, and this is the things that we're eating. This is the things that we're doing to ourselves. We have to be aware of it. We have to be able to take a second look at it. Okay? Yeah, and I guess what I would do in closing, on my closing words here, you know, perhaps it's time that we realize the oneness of all life, and especially the relationship we have with other life. So I guess that's it, and if you would please go to song. In the beginning was the Word. I wonder if that word was imagination. As we look around the world, we'd be hard-pressed to find anything that we have that has not been built without imagination. I believe there are no limits to our imagination. We probably are born with them, and whether or not we recognize them and build them, I guess, is our choice. You know, and in many of our cases, we just continue on with our imagination, and there is no ending to it. I believe that imagination is a truth that resides in all of us. To define that truth is probably to define ourselves. If we really look deeply within each one of us, and we look hard enough, we're going to find that each one of us has a separate truth within us. We want to try to look at that, find it, nurture it, and that's what we are. That's who we've become. To quote Einstein, Einstein said that imagination is more important than knowledge, for knowledge is limited to all we know and understand, while imagination embraces the entire world and all there ever will be known and understand about it. Einstein also said that if you want your child to be intelligent, read him a fairy tale. And he also said that if you want your child to be more intelligent, read him another fairy tale. Can we imagine that there is an order to our universe, as well as an order to the many universes that are in existence? Can we understand that there is an order to the earth, and that order is disturbed by human greed, power, and ownership? We need to understand that. We need to take another look at it. We are probably the only species on Earth that could be extinct and not be missed. The Earth would go on well without us. As to the rest of the life, I'm not so sure about that. Is it possible that we've learned too much what I call people speak? There's 4,200 different religions, and each one has their own particular language, and many of them say, I'm right and you're wrong. There's a lot of philosophies that we've heard. Maybe it's time that we stop listening to other people speak. Not that they're right or wrong or indifferent, but maybe it's time that we took another look inside of ourselves to find that truth that exists and nurture that, understand that. Maybe we come to a better understanding of our family of life that surrounds us. I'm part of what they call the humanities team. It's a consciousness change effect, and it's happening all around the world. And hopefully it'll take good hold. But I'd like to read you something from one of the people that are involved in it. His name is Ted Murphy. And he writes this: nature is the greatest healer there is. There's a magic energy when you immerse yourself in nature. Whether it's walking along a beach, climbing a mountain, walking in the forest, it is difficult to remain depressed when in nature. The rejuvenation is automatic because it is reconnecting you with the source of all creation. The cause of most of our ills today in society are causes by being disconnected from nature. The artificial nature of the environment creates innumerable toxins and permeates our physical as well as our emotional as well as our mental bodies. Our spirit gradually calcifies if we remain disconnected from nature too long. When will humans begin to design habitats that respect and work in harmony within nature instead of in conflict with it? What will it take for a world to recognize that trying to dominate nature is a recipe for disaster on both a personal as well as global perspective? Why not solve this dilemma personally by getting out into nature, breathing fresh air, and discovering the rejuvenating effects of being connected with the divine by experiencing the beauty and majestic of the nature of the world. Now, if we've heard these words, they make sense. We need to do this more. Now, I know I've told a lot of you this story, but bear with me if you've heard it before, because I think it's extremely, extremely important. I read a book not too long ago. It was called The Secret Life of Plants. And inside of this book, there was a horticulturist that did an experiment with the philodendron leaves. And I was so enamored by this, I had to try the experiment myself. So what I did is I took 2 leaves from my plant, I put them on a plate, put the plate in the kitchen. Now for a week, this is going to sound foolish, but I'd love you to all try it. For a week, I would go by and I would caress one of the leaves, and I would tell it how beautiful it looks. And on occasion, if nobody was looking, I'd even give it a little kiss or 2. Okay? The other plant I merely ignored. Didn't say anything derogatory, just merely ignored it. Now, after a full week, the other plant turned brown, and it died. It was dying. The one that I made a fuss over, talked to, was beautiful, green, lively, and had all of its characteristics. Now, I know that an awful lot of us go around and say, well, I know everything about talking to plants or talking to trees. I do it once in a while. Well, I'm here to tell you, there's a big difference between the intellect of thinking, well, I talk to trees or whatever it is you say, and actually having a one-on-one personal contact with nature. It taught me a great deal. And as I look around and I see all of the plants and the trees that give us oxygen and all the rest of it, and I think, my God, how much I have missed by not taking the time to sit down and really understand these plants. I think we need to do it. We need to understand that it's a family of life that we're talking about. They're not lower than we're not more important than they are. We are merely a part of the same earth that they share. It's time we recognize that. While I'm telling stories, I'll tell you another one. Quite a while ago, in Lima, I took on an old home I never should have bought, but I did. I needed a project, I guess. And it was terrible. My God, it was rot and it was disastrous. So I had to gut it inside and out in order to make it livable and make a home out of it. Now, while I was doing this in the kitchen area, I tore it all apart, the walls and everything, and there were these insects. My God, there were spiders larger than I had ever seen in my life. There were insects I couldn't possibly name. I had no idea what they were, but they were all over the place. And I looked at them, and I thought, oh my God, what did I get into here? Well, the first thing I thought is, well, if I go down the hardware store, I can get a spray, I'm certain, and kill them all. I don't know if they'd be back or what would happen. And then I gave it a second thought. And I thought, no, I'm going to sit down with these insects. And I did. And I know you're going to think I'm crazy, but I sat down and I talked to these insects. And I tried to explain that I was trying to build a home here, and you know, I was trying to make it look nice, and there was a lot of work to be done, and we can't share the same space together. And at this point, when I sat down, I said, I really don't know what to do. I don't want you to die. I want us to be able to communicate somehow together. And I would ramble on and on and on. It's a good thing nobody else was there. If they'd have put me in the hospital, I wouldn't be talking right now. Anyway, the next morning I got up and I looked at the project and I went to the area where all the insects were. There wasn't one around anywhere. Nothing at all to be seen. And for the 8 years I lived there, I didn't see one insect, one spider, nothing at all. Now, it told me something. It told me that there's a communication going on. And there really is. We have to take notice of that. Have to look at it very deeply. Okay, so what's the point of all of this stories? I think I've said it before. I've got to say it again. You know, there's more, far more understanding that we need out there. We need to take time to look at the plants in our garden. Take a look at the vegetation that's around. Take a look at the trees that supply the oxygen and air that we breathe. We need to take a harder look. We need to sit down and understand. If it sounds crazy to you, the only advice I can give you is my own personal experience. When I saw that leaf and I understood that there was a communication going on, when I saw those insects and I talked, and as crazy as it sounded, there was a communication going on, I realized there's far more to life, all of this life, the birds in the sky, my God, the animals that are all around us, the insects, the plants, especially the plants, the vegetation that lives all around us, our gardens, our food that we eat. All of these things we can communicate with, and we have to. If we want the earth to survive, if we want to be a part of something grander than what we have, if we want peace and harmony in our world, can you imagine what kind of world we'd have if we took the time to understand that all life around us is not subservient to us. It's equal to us. We're all here. It's a universal order of things. We have to stop disturbing it. We have to become a part of it, not separate from it. I have here, imagine one day that we might become wise enough to view all of life equal to the human form, the image, or imagine if we could view this as equal to ourselves. Imagine the universal order of the oneness that we are. We have to recognize that all life, us, all of that, is made out of the same four substances. And that's where people come with this oneness. We aren't different. We have the light in the sky. We couldn't live without that. We'd have darkness. The plants, the trees that supply us with oxygen. This is how we live. If they died, if we turned around, like in some parts of the country, we eliminated all of this to build a house, we're taking away our life. We have to recognize that. We have to bring all of this back to a perspective that we can understand. Perhaps, just perhaps, we would not have to imagine any longer a life of peace. Just perhaps, we could have a life of peace, beauty, compassion, if we only stopped to understand all of that life that's involved around us. And in closing, I would love to impress one big thing in all of us. You can't have peace outside unless you create peace inside. I'll repeat that again so we understand it. You can't have a peace outside unless we take the time to establish peace inside of ourselves. May it be so.
Imagine there's no heaven. It's easy if you try. No hell below us. Above us only sky. Imagine all the people living for today. Imagine there's no countries. It isn't hard to do. Nothing to kill or die for. No religions too. Imagine all the people living life in peace. You may say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. I hope someday you'll join us, and the whole world will live as one. Imagine no possessions. I wonder if you can. No need for greed or hunger, nor folk with empty hands. Imagine all the people sharing the whole world. You may say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. I hope someday you'll join us, and the whole world will live as one. You may say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. I hope someday you'll join us, and the whole world will live as one.
Join us for worship every Sunday at 10 a.m. at the Unitarian Universalist Church of Canandaigua, a welcoming congregation. We are located at 3024 Cooley Road, 4 miles west of South Main Street, Canandaigua, just north of the intersection with Routes 5 and 20. Look for the blue signs just before the turn. Your comments about this program or questions about the church are welcome at 585-396-1370 or at our website, www.canandaiguauu.org. Producer and editor, Daniel Brigham.